Welcome to Dividing Truth with Lexi Johnson. I am your host, Lexi, and this week on the podcast, we are going to be talking about how to talk to your children about wealth. First, let me share with you, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, Dividing Truth is a weekly podcast that is dedicated to helping women entrepreneurs and women professionals become financially free in these uncertain times, right? And we do that by sharing financial truths, because if there is ever an area that has a lot of myth about it or misunderstanding and things like that nature, it is money, right? And so today, again, our topic is how to talk to your children about wealth. This is so critically important because we talk often about, especially in spaces of faith, we talk about generational curses, right? And one of those curses is even the curse of poverty. And we'll often talk about, the family may be under this, generational curse of poverty and yada yada. But we have a little bit more control by God's grace than we think, and through God. I want to make that clear, right? It's not in and of ourselves, but God has given us knowledge in His Word, and He has gifted many people to have an understanding of how money works, to be able to share with you. And that's important because you want to then share this knowledge with your children, right? But how do you talk to your children about wealth if you yourself don't have a good understanding of how money works? So we're going to talk about that today. Before we dig into our topic, I want to share with you that we are going to be kicking off our Fan of the Month program starting in September. So be on the lookout for that. And there are going to be more details coming on how you can qualify to be Fan of the Month. And if you are not already subscribed, you want to make sure that you're subscribed to the show. You're going to see the website running down below. Make sure that you're subscribed, bit.ly/subscribe dividing truth, all lowercase, subscribe dividing truth. Make sure that you're subscribed, because those details, that's where they're going to be shared if you're subscribed and to that list, right? And just to give you kind of a hint, right? The Fan of the Month is going to be a person who engages with the content, right? Who's a subscriber, who engages with the content. What does that mean? That means that, you watch the broadcast live, or you're engaging in the comment section, you're asking questions, you're leading conversation, or engaging in conversation in our Facebook group. And the Facebook group is Dividing Truth with Lexi. So just put in the search when you go to Facebook, Dividing Truth with Lexi, and you will see the group pop up, and you can request to join the group, right? So all the details about the Fan of the Month will be forthcoming to those who are subscribed to the show, right? So today, let's get into our topic. How do we talk to our children about wealth? As women, it is really important that we don't overlook this, that we don't include this. And a lot of times, this is not part of the discussion that we're having with our children when we're preparing them for real world, when we're preparing them to grow up and to be adults, right? We might talk with them about, well, maybe we might talk with them about relationships, right? We might talk with them about going on to school, or just other various different lessons. But when it comes to money, we don't share a whole lot. And a lot of that is sometimes not because we are just holding the information. It's because we just don't know what we don't know, right? So the first thing that you need to do if you want to talk with your children about wealth, okay, and about money, is that you yourself have to be educated on wealth. You yourself have to be educated on money. And I don't mean just theoretically, right? Like learning the information. I mean, it's great if you can learn it and pass it on that way too, but it's even better when you learn the information and you're practicing it yourself. You are showing your children, right? Because there is just a different level of transferring that knowledge when it's something that you yourself have done, right? So what do we need to do first before we begin talking to our children? As I mentioned, you want to overcome any limiting beliefs, any negative or false statements about money that you've grown up with. And I've talked about that on some episodes before, so I don't necessarily want to dive deep into that. But I do want to give this example. A friend and I were having this conversation a few days ago, and what she said was, we don't, we look at other families that may give their children, let's say they're getting married and they might give their children like 80,000 or 100 grand towards a house, or 50 grand or 20 grand or 30 grand, whatever it is, but it's some money towards a house, right? And families who are of a poverty mindset, because I want to be clear, when I say poor, it doesn't always necessarily mean physically poor, like not having money. You can be poor here in the mindset too, right? So families who have a poverty mindset will be like, no, I'm not giving, you know what I'm saying? I'm not giving you $80,000, to rent a house or whatever. You gotta, it's good if you gotta make your own way, things like that. But what people in a poverty mindset don't necessarily think about is, how do we help our children avoid debt traps, right? And purchasing a home, as much as we talk about how it's an asset, it's not. The truth of the matter is purchasing a home is a liability, period. That's going to be another another podcast, right? When we're talking about real estate. But purchasing a home is a liability unless you plan to monetize that in some way, right? That's for another podcast. So I want to get back to the point of gifting, your child in that way, right? That's not something that you see in and I say our because I know in my family we didn't, our mindset wasn't like that, right? In fact, another area where we talked about this was like co-signing, right? And I know my parents, particularly my mom and friends of mine and their parents were like, not co-signing anything for you, right? And on the one hand, you understand why, because it's like they don't want to mess up their credit. Maybe they can't, you know what I'm saying? But for the most part, I'm talking about those parents who just didn't want to because they didn't want to mess up their own credit. They want their child to build their own credit and things like that. But in a family that has a wealth mindset, they will co-sign for their children, right? Because this is what they understand. So let's talk about an example of co-signing. So for example, a credit card. Well, what they will do is they will put their child on their credit card, right? Now the child doesn't have access to the credit card, but the child's name is on the credit card. And so what that does is it allows the child to then take advantage of a couple of things. One, the parent's good credit. Two, the age and the length of credit history, right? Because one of the problems that children have as they grow up and they become adults and now they're trying to do their own thing, they may be trying to purchase a car, get an apartment, whatever, they don't have credit, right? So they run into problems because they don't have credit. I mean, even if they're trying to get auto insurance, the auto insurance is running their credit. And because they don't have credit, they get charged a higher premium, right? So people with a poverty mindset, families with a poverty mindset don't think about those things. They just think about, oh, you're not going to mess up my, you're not going to mess up my credit. You're not going to mess up my, my standing or whatever. And so thing is, it's like, yeah, we can allow them to take advantage of our credit history without allowing them access to that particular one. It's a credit card to that credit card, right? So there are ways that we can do things for our children to help them succeed, to help them to have a good start, right? So that those are things that when I say we've got to overcome our limiting beliefs, our limiting behaviors, any negative statements and things that we've made about money, we have to be able to overcome those things in order to be able to teach our children how to have to teach our children about wealth and to have a healthy perspective about wealth, right? All right, so number two. So number one was overcoming those limiting beliefs and statements and, all that misinformation, all of that, right? Number two, talk early, talk often. Okay. So another thing that many, especially in my experience as a child and even with my younger children, I didn't really talk to them about money. Like the only that I can recall discussions that we had about money at their early age was some homework that they brought home to help them recognize a penny from a nickel, from a quarter, right? Adding those things up, dollars and their value. And that was it, right? There were no conversations about money and what is money. It's a tool. What is the purpose of it? How, there were no discussions about that, right? And of course you have these discussions on their level as they can handle it, but you talk early and you talk often. You continue to have those discussions. In fact, when my daughter was going off to college, and my daughter is 25 now, so she's out of college, she's on her own, she's doing well. But when she was going to college, I felt like, oh my gosh, there's just so much I never explained, right? And so then I found myself trying to like dump it all, right? Okay, here's what you need to know about money. Here's what you know. And the thing is, if I just would have had those conversations, not only early enough, but often enough, then I would not have felt like I needed to do this data dump, as she was heading off to college. Now, we had time throughout college, to talk through, to talk about money, to talk through situations because she was experiencing that, right? Getting on the college campus, and if you've been to college, the moment you hit that campus, the credit card companies are all there. They've got their tables out. They were there, after you, wanting to sign you up, for wanting you to sign up for credit cards and all that, enticing you with stupid little gifts like water bottles and t-shirts, all the stuff that, young people like. And so um, I was able to have these conversations with her while she was in college, you know, and we still have these conversations now. But honestly, these conversations should have started when she was young, but they couldn't have started when she was young, 3 years old, 4, 5, 6, 7, on up, because I didn't know about money at that time, right? So when I did begin to understand about money, then I began to have, these conversations with her, but still I didn't feel like I had enough because I was feeling like I needed to, again, data dump when she was on her way to college. So we don't want that to happen. So you want to talk early and you want to talk often with your children about money. So what kinds of things do you want to talk about? Well, number three, you want to discuss the opportunities that they can have, and you want to discuss the obstacles that come with wealth, right? Because there are opportunities and there are obstacles as well. And so you want to talk with them about the fact that, if they have good credit and, good payment history and things like that, what it lends itself to, that they can borrow money at, a less interest rate. You want to talk to them about all those kinds of things. That the fact that to have money allows you to be able to do more. Now, in our family, when we're talking about doing more, we're not talking about just selfish type stuff, right? Sure, you can travel, sure, you can do this. But for me and in our family, the reason you want to have money is because you're able to fulfill your purpose on a grander scale, right? Whatever you have been assigned to do on this earth, if you have the tool of money, you can do it on a grander scale, or you can do it without having to hold back or anything like that, because you don't have money, right? Like if you don't have money, then you take a job that you may not necessarily want, but you take it because you have to make the money, right? So you can't really full time follow your passion, and not just your passion, but you can't follow what it is God placed you on this earth to do to the fullest, right? So this is one of the opportunities that having wealth, having money affords you to do, right? Um, and then you want to talk about, obstacles. So obstacles for not having it, obstacles for having wealth, right? Because when you have wealth, then there's the issue of, making sure that you protect it, right? That's a whole nother podcast in and of itself, protecting your wealth and how you do that. But these are discussions that you want to have with your children early and often, right? Number 4, you want to talk about your family history. You want to talk about your family history, okay? And so for me, it's important that I talk with my children about the fact that I didn't know anything about money, right? I didn't know anything about how money worked. I didn't understand money. I didn't understand very simple concepts to help me become financially free and all of that. So I talk with them about that, and I talk with them about how that impacted their lives, right? See, my 4-year-old, because I've got children all over the board, right? I've got uh, 2 grown children and 2 younger children. So my 2 grown children really didn't, in their later years, they are almost, grown and out the house years, they got they got the knowledge that I began to get, but they didn't have it from the time they were children, right? So they have a mix of some of the behaviors I had, and now some of these new things, right? And so, but my younger children are going to have a different experience. My children that are still in the house, they're going to have a different experience, right? And so you want to talk with your children about your family history, not only yours, but if you know and understand, like, your parents and where they came from as far as money, what they thought about money, their successes, their failures with money, all of that. You want to have that discussion about your family history, right? And then one of the things that this next one, this one is really lacking, and that is, what are your family goals as it relates to finances, or what are your family goals, and then how do you align your finances with that, or how do finances tie in, right? So before we talk about that one, let me just take a brief moment to let you know that you're listening to Dividing Truth with Lexi Johnson, presented by Radio Wave. And you can go to www.radiowaveforyou.com to subscribe, and you can go there and listen to many other great podcasts and radio shows that are presented by Radio Wave, right? And there are some amazing ones, right? There's podcasts about being married. There's podcasts about fashion, and podcasts about all kinds of things, right? So check them out, www.radiowaveforyou.com, right? And I also want to encourage that for those of you who are watching, and whether you're watching live or whether you are watching or listening to the replay, engage with the content, right? Get in the comments. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear your experiences, or see your experiences, right? I want you to ask your questions. I will definitely come back in the comment section and answer your questions and anything like that. So engage, with the podcast. So next, the next one that I want to discuss, and so this is, I believe we're on number 6. Don't quote me, right? But your family goals. And you know what? I think that if we took time as a couple, okay, before you get married, if you take the time to discuss what are your goals individually, what are your goals as a family, okay? Because now the individuals are coming together, and that doesn't mean that you're going to forsake your individual goals. But now, what are the goals as a family? What do we value as a family? What do we stand for as a family? What are we trying to accomplish on this earth as a family, right? And answer those questions. And then Once those questions are answered, okay, how will our finances align with this, right? What are we going to do in our finances to ensure that we are going to be able to achieve our family goals, our family mission, our family values, whatever it is that you want to call it, right? That is so important because many times I believe the reason why families have so much tension as it relates to money, and as you know, like money is the number one or two reason, depending on whose statistics you're looking at, that families, that couples, that marriages break up, right? Finances is right in the thick of things. And so I believe that if couples took the time to really determine what the family goals are and determine how the finances align and to really make some uh, not just uh, overall family goals but financial goals that are in alignment with that. I think if families took the time to do that, if couples took the time to do that, we just might see less divorce, right? I know for my husband and I, because we sit down and we are constantly looking at uh, our goals as a family and what does that mean for our finances and things like that. Like we just don't have that tension about money. We just don't. And it's not that we are um, totally alike, as it comes to money or anything like. We're close. We're very similar, but then we have some differences in how we feel things should be done. But because we have a goal that we're working towards as a family, then it makes it easier when those differences come up, because now it's all about, okay, well, how does this help to achieve this? Because at the end of the day, if it helps to achieve the family goals, right, or even an individual goal, that we've had, then whatever, right? You may have a different way of doing it. I may have a different way of doing it, but we don't need to necessarily argue and fuss and fight over the way, right? We know we're trying to get to the same place. So there's just some give and take. I just think that it's better. And I'm excited because my husband and I know we're going to do an episode here on Dividing Truth, and you'll really get to see that dynamic and each of us from our own perspective talking about that, right? So if you haven't done it, have some family goals, okay? Whether you're married or not, okay? You don't have to have a husband or a wife to make goals, right? Or to have family goals. If it's just you and your children, you can still have family goals. You can still have, a family purpose and still talk about, okay, how does this purpose align with what we're trying to do, right? How does our finances align, with the purpose that we're trying to accomplish in our family, right? So that's huge. All right, the next thing is talking with our children about privacy as it relates to wealth. Now, I'm not talking about privacy in the way that most of us are used to. See, what most of us are used to is, we don't talk about your finances, right? You don't talk about what you make. You don't talk about how much your house is worth or your car is worth. You don't talk about, these things, right? In fact, it's like not only do you not talk about them with strangers, you don't even talk about it with your family, right? And that presents problems, right? So I'm not talking about that. But what I am talking about is if you look at people who have a lot of money, the majority of people, because it's not all of them, but if you look at the majority of people who have money, you would never know, right? They're not out here driving the flashiest car. They're not out here wearing the flashiest clothes, and they're not out here, having all kinds of extravagant things. There are some millionaires, billionaires who live in modest homes, and some do not. And I'm not saying one is wrong and the other is right. I'm not. I'm just saying that there is a level of privacy, because when you begin to be extremely flashy and all that, then you begin to attract some negative attention, if you will, right? And so there, you want to have like a level of privacy and discretion as it relates to wealth. You're going to move, right, and flow and do your thing. But again, being mindful and being and understanding that you don't have to flash everything, right? For those who have a poverty mindset, um, being flashy is, there's just something we feel like we have to, show everybody that, oh, I have money. You know what I'm saying? And most of the time, you don't. You know what I'm saying? Most of the time, we don't. We're wearing all the stuff. We have this nice car. We're driving all that, but then we're dying on the inside because, man, this car note is $400, $500 a month, right? People don't know that. They just know I'm driving a nice car, and so we will be a detriment to our own wealth because of that type of behavior, right? So move how God wants you to move, right? Doing your thing, okay, as He blesses you with money, but discretion, right? Discretion. Like I said, there are so many people, and you could be living next to people, and you will not know that they have all of this kind of money or whatever. So there's some privacy, right? There's not all this flashiness involved, right? Okay, so the next thing that I want to about or share with you is the next tip that I want to share with you is discussing with your children what your family's approach is to giving, right? Giving is so essential in terms of being successful with money. And I want to be careful really how I'm wording this, because I don't want to give the impression that if you give money, you get money. That's not the impression, because then what happens is people are just, your motive for giving is not pure, right? So in our family, the discussion is you give because you give, right? You don't give in expectation that you're going to get something in return, whether it's from the people you give to or from God or, from wherever. We give to give, period. Because when you give to give, you rest assured that the motive is pure, right? You're giving just to be a blessing. But the moment that you give and you are expecting in return, whether you're expecting from that person or just expecting from God or whoever, it's no longer really a blessing to give, right? Because if it's never returned to you, then you might get an attitude, right? Like, I gave, this, that, and this person, they didn't even say thank you, or they didn't even blah, blah, blah. And so when you find yourself doing that, then you've not given just to give, right? There's been so many times that somebody has asked, for some help or whatever, and I've given, and I just give. I don't even expect the thank you. Am I saying, do I not want it all? No, but am I going to be upset if I don't? No, I'm not. You know what I'm saying? If I'm giving, I'm just giving because that's what I want to do, right? So we give to get. What is your family's approach to giving? Share that with your children. Talk with them about that, right? Giving in our family is important. So therefore it is a designated, like, money is allocated to that. Anytime, any income that comes into the home, 10% of it is allocated towards giving. Okay. So what is your approach? What is your family approach towards giving? Right. And then another thing that you want to talk with your children about is the role of external advisors and having advisors. Now, listen, this is different for those with a poverty mindset, because those with a poverty mindset don't have advisors. They don't have financial coaches. They don't have anyone that they go to talk to about money. And why is that? Because they believe that, you don't talk to people about your money, right? And because you're not open to talking to people about money, you can't really learn the things that you don't know, right? So you're not sharing anything, nothing is going out, nothing is coming in, right? And so in families where there is a poverty mindset, there is no talk about the role of an external advisor. There isn't, right? It's more like what families with a poverty mindset think about getting therapy and counseling and stuff like that. A lot of times they will think, oh, don't nobody need to know your business, right? Nobody needs to know your business. You keep whatever happens in the house stays in the house and all that kind of stuff, right? Was this, that same attitude trickles over even into how money is handled, right? Like nobody needs to know what's going on. Because nobody, don't talk to anybody about it. You can't trust anybody about anything. And so there are no external advisors. But in a family that has a wealth mindset, there are external advisors. There is the belief and an emphasis of importance put on learning more about money and who you learn that from. And so an external advisor it could be a financial advisor, could be a financial coach. It could be, um, you know, anyone out there, financial planner. That's another title that someone will go by. These are all different roles. A coach, a planner, an advisor. They're all different roles. Okay, so they're not one and the same. They're all different roles. But what's the role of these people in the family, and how much of a role do they play? What is, and again, it's going to be dependent upon the kind that you have. So, and how to pick one, right? Like, we're not having these conversations because we don't know what we don't know. We're not educated about money. We're not any of that. So we don't even talk to our children about having financial advisors and coaches and things like that. And they grow up and then they don't have one, just like we didn't have one, right? And they don't see the importance of having one, just like we didn't see the importance of having one. Or maybe they are beginning to see the importance of having one, but they're not necessarily sure who to go to, who to talk to, who to trust, all of those things. Because sure enough, because some people will say, well, you just don't know who you can talk to about your money and blah, blah, blah. And yes, but that's like anything else, right? Here's a new store that pops up today, and you may not be sure about how they're going to treat you as a customer, how they're going to serve you, if they're going to be able to meet your needs, if they're going to, you don't know, right? Until you go and kind of check them out. Maybe you check out reviews, maybe you talk with former clients or current clients or whatever, right? You learn how to vet, a person that is on the outside of your family, right? But is there to help you and teach you and all of that. Because there's just a lot of things, as you begin to build wealth, you need to be talking to someone who can show you how to protect that wealth. Before you begin building wealth, you need to talk with someone who can teach you how to do it, right? So these are all things, but once you know that, these are things that you also have to talk with your children about. They have to become everyday conversation. And children, we can't expect that they're just going to grow up and do differently. They're not. They're not. They're going to do what has been ingrained in their minds over and over and over and over again from a young age, right? So when we look at our families and we see that generation after generation after generation is not successful in the area of finances, it's because no one as of yet has decided that they're going to do something different, right? So I'm challenging you, my listeners, okay? I'm challenging you to do something different. If you are not having these conversations with your children, and there's so much more to talk to them about money, and you don't have to do all of the talking, right? If you have someone external that's advising you, they can also help you to teach your children. But I am challenging you. If you're not having these conversations with your children, ask yourself, why aren't you, right? If it's because you yourself don't know much about money, but then it's imperative that you understand how money works, right? That you begin to become educated about it, and that you take ownership for your education and the education of your children, right? And stop waiting for the streets to teach them or whomever else to teach them, because they may not be getting the right information, right? We keep looking, again, like I said, generation after generation. We see the same things occurring, but we're not doing anything about it. We're just thinking, we're going to keep doing the same thing that we've been doing, hoping for a different result. And we all know what that lends itself to, right? Insanity, right? And so it's very, very important. Again, if you yourself need to become more educated about finances, if you don't have financial goals, if you've never any of these things that I've talked about today, and you've never considered talking about these things, you wouldn't even know how to answer these questions if I asked you what is what is your financial goal, what is the family's financial goal, what is your plan for leaving a legacy of wealth for your children. What is your plan to ensure that your children are well prepared for adulthood financially? If you have never considered these questions and considered these things that I've talked about today, then you've got work to do, right? And I'm not saying that in a judgmental way, because, like I said, I've been there, right? I was there, and I had to decide to do that work, right? To learn what I needed to learn, because it wasn't anybody else's responsibility but mine. Because truth be told, they're not going to learn it in school, not going to learn it in church, not going to learn it in college. In fact, I've been in master's classes and didn't learn how money worked there. I've been in PhD classes and I did not learn how money worked there. Okay. So I didn't learn in any kind of formal educational setting. No, I learned from an external advisor, an external person who knew something, who knew about money, right? That could teach me about money. And the reason why I even ended up going to learn was because I had found myself in a crazy, almost hopeless situation. And I don't want that for you either, right? You don't want to have devastation happen to you before you determine, hey, I'm going to do something different here, right? So that is the topic for today. Again, leave in the comments your thoughts. If you love the episode, liked it or whatever, hit the like button, give me the hearts or whatever platform that you're using and watching this with, right? Share it with a friend. Remember that you can subscribe to the show, and I'm running that link down at the bottom of your screen again, bit.ly/subscribe dividing truth. Subscribe so that you can get these episodes direct to your inbox. Not only that, our Fan of the Month program is kicking off next month, and just some other tips and things that you can get directly to your inbox, right? So subscribe to the show. Follow us, join our Facebook group, because the conversation can continue in there, right? Any other questions that you have, and it's great that we can come to a space where we can, talk with other people who are like-minded, who are wanting to get themselves on track and wanting to become financially free. Again, the group is mostly women, okay, because that's who I cater to, but it is not to the exclusion of men. So if you are a man and you are listening, please feel free to join in the conversation. But women, listen, it is important. We have a huge role, and not that the fathers don't, they do, but we have a huge role. A lot of times their education and the things that they're learning in the home and all of that, a lot of times it is left up to us as women. Again, not to say that fathers don't impart important lessons or anything like that, but a lot of times it is left up to the women to do that. And so, we need to be able to pass on some things to help our children to be financially successful. Okay. And if you yourself need to learn um, those financial concepts so that you yourself can practice those things and then begin teaching yourself those things, then reach out to me, right? That's what I'm here for. I am a licensed financial coach, right? And I have information and tools and things like that that can help you to become financially free. This podcast is one of it, one of those things. It's free to you, right? This podcast is one of those things, and there's other free things that are available, but reach out to me because that's what I'm here for. My mission is to help you become financially free in these uncertain times, right? And it's specific to this podcast so that you can specific to the topic of this podcast so that you can help your children, right? Have conversations with your children now while they're young, okay? Not when they're older and in trouble, but now while they're young, and help them to have a very healthy mindset as it relates to money, all right? This has been Dividing Truth. And we are going to see you next Thursday with another great episode to help you to become financially free in uncertain times. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.
Audio Jungle.